eligibility provision, submitting the CEP elections. Today's training will cover current guidance and background information, CEP notification requirements, submitting CEP elections in eScholar, and other CEP considerations. There are many guidance materials available for information on the community eligibility provision. Please note that CEP guidance was updated year before last. Community eligibility provision planning and implementation guidance, community eligibility provision guidance and updated Q&As, community eligibility provision implementing the new minimum identified student percentage, and CEP statutory annual notification and publication requirements. So, what is CEP? It's a program established by the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act that allows students to receive free meals under the school breakfast program and National School Lunch Program. While the program operates on a 4-year cycle, schools may opt in or opt out each year. As an alternative to household applications for free and reduced price meals, CEP schools cannot process meal applications. Prior to being approved to participate in CEP, SFAs must agree to the following: serve all children free breakfasts and lunches, cover costs above reimbursements with non-federal funds, not collect or process meal applications. 4. SFAs by individual site or clusters of sites must have an enrollment with at least 25% of the students considered identified students to participate in CEP. Your data must be as of April 1st of the school year prior to participation. Resident child care institutions are not eligible. The primary purpose of the nonprofit school food service account is to operate or improve a school meal program that serves nutritious meals meeting the meal pattern requirements. Therefore, funds in the NSFSA may be used to support CEP in accordance with 7 CFR 210.14a. This includes federal reimbursement and other assistance provided under the NSLA and Child Nutrition Act of 1966, including unused reimbursement from the Summer Food Service Program and Child and Adult Care Food Program. This also includes other funds in the NSFSA, such as non-program revenue in excess of revenue required to meet requirements at 7 CFR 210.14. The expenditure of additional non-federal funds is not required if all CEP operating costs can be covered from allowable funding sources. If there is a difference between the cost of serving lunches and breakfast at no cost to all participating children and funding available to support CEP as described above, the LEA must pay that difference with non-federal funding sources. Sources of non-federal funds may include state and local funds, cash donations, and in-kind contributions from outside sources such as volunteer services. As a reminder, expenditure of all funds in the nonprofit school food service account are subject to federal cost principles detailed at 2 CFR 200 and may only be made for allowable costs. Operating CEP is an allowable cost for a nonprofit school food service account. During the process of determining school eligibility, the term identified students refers to children who are directly certified for free school meals based on their participation or a household member's participation in other means-tested assistance programs, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, FDPR, Medicaid free. Please note, students who qualify for Medicaid reduced are not included as identified students as it only includes those who directly certify for free meals. Identified students are also children who are categorically eligible for free school meals without an application and who are not subject to verification, including homeless, runaway, and migrant, children enrolled in a federally funded Head Start program or comparable state-funded Head Start or pre-kindergarten program, foster children certified through means other than a household application. Please note that children must be considered eligible for one of these categories between the start of the school year and April 1st. A few quick points for SFAs to remember in determining school eligibility are: students in the same household with directly certified students, SNAP and TANF, can be counted as identified students. SFAs are not able to use information from free and reduced applications to identify students. If an identified student percentage of at least 62.5% is determined, then all meals are reimbursed at the free rate. If the identified student percentage falls between 25 and 62.5%, then meals will be reimbursed at a combination of free and paid rates. Reminder, there is a new 25% threshold as of 2024. This is the formula that SFAs should use to determine the identified student percentage. You will divide the number of identified students as of April 1st by the number of enrolled students as of April 1st, and then multiply by 100. I provided two examples of percentages for you. The first example shows a school that has determined that there are 550 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. To find the identified student percentage, you would divide the 550 identified students by the enrollment of 700, which rounds to 0.7857, multiply by 100 to calculate the ISP of 78.57%, which meets the threshold. The second example shows 150 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. Again, you would divide the 150 identified students by the 700 enrollment, which rounds to 0.2142, multiplied by 100 to calculate the ISP of 21.43%. Please remember that the ISP must be at least 25% to be eligible. Therefore, the percentage of 21.43% does not meet the threshold. For schools participating in CEP, the ISP multiplied by 1.6 equals the percentage of meals claimed at the free rate. The remaining meals served up to 100% are reimbursed at the paid rate. In example 1, we'll use the ISP from the previous slide, 78.57% multiplied by the CEP multiplier of 1.6 equals a claiming percentage of 125.71%. This percentage exceeds 100%, therefore all meals can be claimed as free. In example 2, an SFA with a ISP of 46.85% multiplied by the CEP multiplier of 1.6 equals a claiming percentage of 74.96%. So this SFA will claim 74.96% of their meals as free and the remaining 25.04% as paid. Now we'll discuss the notification requirements. The requirements for CEP elections are as follows. CEP elections begin today, May 12, 2026. Each year, all CEP elections must be made by June 30th. All CEP elections will be completed in the eScholar CEP Manager. On this slide, you'll find a listing of the CEP deadline dates. The population data was due in eScholar CEP Manager by April 15th. It is important to note that all SFAs must make final elections regarding CEP participation for the 26-27 school year through the eScholar CEP Manager by June 30th, and that is a hard deadline. CEP elections. What are CEP elections? Selecting into CEP is choosing to participate in the Community Eligibility Provision Program for the upcoming school year. School food authorities decide whether schools will participate individually, as part of a cluster, or district-wide. Schools may be grouped in any way as long as the group as a whole has an ISP of 25% or higher. The ISP for a group of schools is calculated as follows: the sum of the identified students for the entire group of schools divided by the sum of this total student enrollment for the entire group of schools. This is done by CEP Manager. Districts can group schools in order to maximize federal reimbursements. What is a base year? The base year is the first year of the four-year CEP cycle. If the SFA reestablished, the base year will be the upcoming school year. For example, a base year of 2025 means school year 24-25 was the first year of the four-year cycle, whereas a base year of 2027 means school year 26-27 will be the first year of the four-year cycle. Once you have chosen your base year, the CEP four-year cycle, at the end of the fourth year, schools must redetermine their eligibility and funding formula based on approved data sources. However, schools can choose to recalculate and lock in their funding each year if it increases or is at the 100% free claiming threshold year to year. Alternatively, they can keep the same funding throughout the four-year cycle. This chart demonstrates population data you elected to use in community eligibility provisions your base year. So for example, if you were to elect a new base year of 2027, you could continue using that data for 4 years up until school year 2030. When is establishing a new base year required? Anytime there's a change in student population that impacts the identified students or the enrollment, the school or the group of schools participating in CEP must recalculate the ISP. Please refer to the Community Eligibility Provision guidance and updated Q&As for more information. CEP elections in eScholar. When logging into eScholar, users should access the login URL linked on the screen and enter your login information. The CEP Manager icon is the abacus on the navigation panel. The icon will only appear if the user has the rights to CEP Manager functions within Security Manager. CEP Manager allows the user to view, update, and certify the population and election data. Once the state has approved the population submission, the district will see the approved status indicator for population. Now let's click Elections, Recalculate tab. The Elections tab is available as of the time of this training. The first time you open the Elections Recalculate page, you will need to select Load Election Data in order for the data to populate the Sites section. After you load the election data, please review that all of your sites successfully loaded under location name. If you have a larger number of sites, you may need to load more. This page contains pre-populated data from last year's election submission, which is base year population data, and the current year population data from the April 1, 2026 population tab. Current base year is the first year of your up to 4-year CEP cycle. The number in parentheses is the number of years you've operated under this base year. The participation decision column will default to the prior year participation decision. So CEP Manager Election Summary, and then we'll go into the details of 3 different scenarios. So step 1 for elections, this section displays all sites associated to the group selected above per CEP provisions. The data displayed includes base year population data and current base year population data. You must select a participation decision for each site. All sites set to a cluster or individual participation selection will be added to the elections participation summary panel, where additional actions are required for all participating sites. Elections Participation Summary, which is step 2 for elections. This section displays all sites identified as participating, individual participation, or in a cluster in the sites panel above. The data displayed in the table will be dependent on your selection in the base year decision column. You must select a base year decision for each site. Election submission results, which is step 3 for elections. The elections data below is based upon the selections in the elections recalculate worksheet. These numbers should be reviewed and verified before submitting the data. And now we'll walk through the 3 different scenarios. Example 1, district-wide CEP elections, which is most districts in Louisiana. District-wide button. This selects all sites eligible to participate into one cluster of sites. If you are electing CEP for all CEP eligible sites, you can check the district-wide button and all sites will be clustered together. This recalculate page allows the user to indicate if they are going to go district-wide, and they would not have to do any site-by-site setup. If the SFA ISP is greater than 25%, the district-wide button will be available to select. The sponsor was district-wide in the previous school year, so it is automatically selected. In the type right under cluster group summary, it shows district-wide, number of sites, base year ISP percentage, and current year ISP percentage. The same information loads under election participation summary, current base year data. Because the sponsor participated in CEP as district-wide in the current school year and has been running off base year data for less than 4 years, base year decision has two options: continue with existing base year and create a new base year. The following slide shows what populates under decision data when each option is selected. If you select continue with existing base year, the decision data populates with your 2025 with 25, your previous base year. If you select create a new base year, the decision data populates with 2027 base year data, which is population data from April 1, 2026. Reminder, if your current school year ISP has increased from your ISP of the prior year or you are above 62.5%, you may want to consider reestablishing, which is selecting create a new base year. Review the election submission results. Note that after ISP percentage, there is calculated ISP percentage. This is your free claiming percentage. Once CEP determinations are made for each site, you must certify that the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. After checking the box, you can submit and certify your elections. After you hit the submit button, the status box will change to submitted. So that's all for district-wide. Now we'll talk about example 2, CEP not district-wide. The district can also set up the site-by-site participation, and the clusters can be assigned on this page. When choosing clusters, choose cluster 1 first, followed by cluster 2, 3, and 4 sequentially. Do not skip a cluster number in the sequence. The cluster ISP percentage will automatically populate under cluster group summary and elections participation summary. On the next slide, you'll see the cluster change when you change a site to individual participation. Individual participation only applies to schools operating CEP by themselves at their individual ISP. Not participating sites will not operate under CEP and must collect free and reduced price meal applications. Not participating sites will not be listed under election participation summary as they are not participating. Notice that by changing one site that was in the cluster to individual participation, the cluster now reflects a total of 3 sites. The cluster group summary and election participation summary will automatically update each time you make a change under participation decision. Because the sponsor has selected a new cluster and a site for individual participation, the only option that populates is create a new base year. Note that the non-participating site does not appear under elections participation summary because it is not participating. The user can view the details for the election submissions. Click the double arrow to drill into the details for cluster 1. This page shows you the school locations included in the cluster, total identified, total enrolled, and ISP percentage for each site. It also breaks down which programs the identified students were matched under. Click the double arrow on the top right to return back to the election submissions page for step 3. Once CEP determinations are made for each site and you confirm this is how you want to elect to participate in CEP for the upcoming school year, you must certify the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. 2, after checking the certification box, you can submit and certify your elections. Example 3, electing not participating in CEP. This is an example where the School Food Authority has decided that none of their sites will participate in community eligibility provision. All sites are marked as not participating. Not participating indicates that the site will not participate in CEP, will charge, and will collect free and reduced price meal applications. You have no elections for participation to select if all sites' participation decision is not participating. Move on to the Election Submissions tab by selecting it at the top of the page. Here. Once CEP determinations are made for each site, you must certify the information is correct by checking the box next to the certification statement. After checking the box, you can submit and certify your elections. After you submit and certify, the election status box will change to submitted and the submit and certify checkbox will be grayed out. So, in summary, step 1, you must select a participation decision for each site or select district-wide. Election participation summary. Step 2 for elections, you must select a base year decision for district-wide, each individually participating site or cluster. And then on the election submission tab, which is step 3, you must review and verify the elections data before submitting. After submitting and certifying, the election status will change to submitted. Now let's talk about other CEP considerations. Newly opened schools and or schools new to NSLP and SBP should contact the state agency to discuss if they are able to participate in CEP. These are handled on a case-by-case basis. Please note the deadlines for elections is June 30th for all schools. Opting out of CEP, SFAs and schools may elect to stop CEP at any time by 1. Notifying LDOE of the decision, 2. Notifying households of the decision, allowing ample time for submission of free and reduced applications, and SFAs must offer all students reimbursable free meals for a period of at least 30 operating days following the date of restoration of standard procedures or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. End of the CEP cycle or grace year. What if the SFA does not have an identified student percentage of 25% or higher in year 4 of the current cycle? In this situation, the SFA may be eligible to stay on the option for an additional year, which is a grace period. In order to be eligible for this grace year, this identified student percentage in year 4 of the last cycle must be between 15 and 25%. Therefore, if a system cluster in year 4 has an ISP of 19%, they could continue a grace year at 30.4% free claiming and 69.6% paid claiming. Note, non-federal funds are necessary if the total amount of federal reimbursement through CEP does not fully cover the cost of serving all student meals at no charge. FNS encourages state agencies to implement the discretionary carryover provision to ensure the children moving from CEP to non-CEP schools continue to have access to school meals and do not experience a gap in school meal access at the beginning of the school year. Allowing LEAs to provide carryover eligibility for students transitioning from CEP schools aims to limit disruptions in the providing meal benefits to low-income students and minimize the burden on the affected LEAs. Meals served to students during the carryover period are claimed at the federal free rate. Carryover refers to a child's eligibility from the previous school year being carried over into the current or new school year. According to 7 CFR 245.6, an individual student's eligibility from the previous school year carries over for up to 30 operating days into the new school year, or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. The 30 operating days begins on the first operating day of school. Operating days are the days on which reimbursable meals are provided by a school or another program sponsor. Carryover applies to eligibility established through a household application or through direct certification. Meals served during the carryover period are claimed at the appropriate rate depending on the individual child's eligibility status from the previous school year. Carryover allows students to continue receiving school meals benefits while families complete and submit and schools process applications. The carryover period is not intended to delay processing of applications. Instead, schools must process applications as they are received and promptly notify households of their eligibility status. Within 10 days of receiving the application, the LEA must make a determination and notify the household of its eligibility status. While not required to issue notification about the carryover period, school officials are encouraged to clarify for families that the carryover will end after 30 operating days. School officials should inform affected families that they must submit a new application for meal benefits to reestablish their child's eligibility at the end of the carryover period. If a student transfers within an SFA from a non-CEP school to another non-CEP school, the free or reduced eligibility must transfer with the student from the previous school. If the student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school within an SFA, the student will automatically receive free meals. If the student transfers from a CEP school to a non-CEP school within an SFA, the SFA must provide meals for up to 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. If a student transfers to a new SFA from a non-CEP school to another non-CEP school, the free and reduced price eligibility may transfer from one SFA to another. If a student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school in a new SFA, the student will receive free meals at the new school. If a student moves from a CEP school into a non-CEP school into a different SFA, the school must provide free meals for 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. What about a meal charge policy? If all schools in an SFA operates a non-pricing provision, CEP, the SFA is not required to develop a meal charge policy as no children will be charged for meals. If any school/schools in an SFA operate standard counting and claiming, the SFA must develop a meal charge policy. CEP schools will not complete the verification process, but will complete the verification summary form due in January annually. Alternate income surveys. Alternate procedures must be used to determine economic status of individual students, and CEP schools are not allowed to collect free and reduced lunch applications. School systems without meal applications may not be capturing kids that are economically disadvantaged based on income eligibility for free or reduced meals. School systems can implement an income eligibility survey to collect students' family income data with the goal of accurately identifying these students for economically disadvantaged. Note, alternative household income surveys are not school meal applications, and the costs associated with collecting household income information in CEP schools may not be charged to the nonprofit school food service account. Students identified as economically disadvantaged on income surveys are not considered identified students for CEP. Record keeping requirements. CEP schools are subject to the same basic reporting and record keeping requirements as schools conducting normal counting and claiming or operating under other special provisions. The state agency does assess the accuracy of an LEA's ISP. In Louisiana, as part of the administrative review, the SA will locate 10% or a statistically valid sample of identified student names on appropriate source documentation. Therefore, the SFA must, at a minimum, as part of the administrative review records, maintain the following ISP data for LEAs and schools participating in CEP, a list of all of the identified students with their ISP classification used to determine the ISP from all schools participating in CEP from each district, documentation for the total enrollment at all CEP schools, and the ISP worksheet that the LEAs use to calculate the ISPs and submit to state agencies with appropriate documentation. In addition, this documentation must be retained for 3 years after submission of the final claim for reimbursement under that claiming percentage. In summary, all CEP elections must be completed in eScholar CEP Manager. CEP elections will begin today, May 12, 2026. All CEP elections must be made by June 30th, 2026. If you have any questions, please contact the LDOE Division of Nutrition Support, Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov. or contact myself, Mary Katie Moses at mary.moses@la.gov and Kylie Champagne at kyliechampagne@la.gov. All right. Thank you so much for your time today.